was asked by the Jewish Report to write a piece for Rosh Hashana, the New Year, but I thought this message has broader appeal, so I want to share it. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new year, and I'm feeling good. Well, kind of. There is always an element of hope that comes with new beginnings, and I'm additionally hopeful this Rosh Hashana will not just herald incremental change for South Africa and beyond, but can be used more as a springboard to a much better space and place for humanity. It's entirely possible and achievable, so in this message I plan to unpack why and how. With New Year also being the Festival of Trumpets, I'm going to ask you all to trumpet the sincere message of possibility, should you agree with it, far and wide. The world needs introspection and radical change. It's a well-known fact that the British and other nations who followed managed to conquer and colonize the globe, much like the Romans did well before that, by applying a very simple and brutally powerful strategy: divide and rule. It's accurately described as the policy of maintaining control over one's subordinates or opponents by encouraging dissent between them from uniting in opposition. This is the great trick that has been played on planet Earth, sadly over millennia. However, with the level of connection and education within the world today, I think there is a possibility of a new awakening, a new awareness that can inspire everyday people, the 8 billion of us, to actively reject the constructed strategies put in place to divide us, and for those who truly don't wish the world well to be vanquished. The greatest dividers of man are race, religion, gender, and sexual orientation. As my wise grandfather, Philip Pearl, would have said, a dislike of the unlike. I have a close friend who won't touch pork. He was circumcised as a baby. His uncle died the other day and was buried within 24 hours in a shroud, and Abraham is the founding father of his religion. When he prays, he ends it with Amen. He is Muslim. There is a fundamental human truth here. There is far more that unites us than that which divides us. But the divide and rule strategy instead focuses exclusively on those tiny things that could be used to separate us, and like a crowbar, it's used to lever the small cracks and wedges to make them wider differences. With this, there is always gain in it for someone, never for broader society nor humanity. The Church decided well over 100 years after the Romans crucified Jesus that they would shift the blame to the Jews for his murder. Then, 1,500 years later, that slur was attempted to be repudiated by the Catholic Church through the catechism produced by the Council of Trent, where blame for this deicide was to pass back to all humanity, not just the Jews. But this forgiveness was rejected by most at the time, and even today, because it would not suit a heinous agenda. To blame the Jews for murdering Christ is akin to the apartheid National Party blaming the ANC for the murder of Steve Biko. It's utterly preposterous and defies all logic. It's a manipulation of events to suit an agenda. It's as preposterous now as it was then. The Jews were ruled with an iron fist as second-class citizens by the Romans. The Romans punished and murdered those who threatened their absolute sovereignty through crucifixion. Jesus was crucified, and yet when the New Testament was written, someone had a good enough memory to peg the murder on the Jews, who allegedly, as slaves, instructed their masters, the Romans, to do their bidding. And that is why, in 1982, I had an apple thrown at my head at an Anglican school because I had allegedly murdered Christ. It's a curious, tragic, and accurate observation as we explore the mind-crushing stupidity of man in falling for the divide and rule strategy, to think that whilst anyone who had a Jewish parent or grandparent was sent to the gas chambers of Auschwitz and 5 other large extermination camps for this religious lineage, that it escaped the millions of murderers and all those who conspired and supported this genocide, that the man on the cross in their very churches was a Jew himself, as most certainly was his mother Mary, a Galilean Jewess, and the wife of the equally Jewish Joseph. Yet, people were so blinded by a combination of hate and avarice, being the legal permission to now steal everything their Jewish friends and neighbors owned, that they willingly went with this convenient lie, amplified by a lunatic failed art student and his fellow psychopaths in the Nazi Party. It was no different in Rwanda in 1994 with the Hutus and Tutsis, where 800,000 Tutsis were murdered by their former friends and neighbors because they were brainwashed into suddenly believing they were cockroaches, or the Bosnians murdering 8,000 of their Muslim men and boys in 1995. You see, I raise these things because it's not ancient history. It's here and very much a current reality. Not that COVID-19 sees any real difference between any of us, nor cancer, tobacco, addiction, or any other affliction. It's all man-made to drive a senseless wedge between us for power and money. There are more guns in America today than there are people in arguably the world's greatest democracy. Just think about that for a moment. There also happens to be a lot of money and power in guns, weapons, and warfare. Peace, if weaponry is your stock in trade, is the enemy. We are in an age where vice is often wrapped as virtue, where the United Nations Human Rights Council and even Human Rights Watch, under the alleged inveterate anti-Semite Ken Roth's leadership, will pass tens of resolutions against a tiny speck of land called Israel, the only Jewish country in the world as it happens, with almost no evident concern for a single human rights violation in that bastion of human rights, being the Middle East, or the plight of 1.5 million Uyghur Muslims still detained in the Xinjiang internment camps in China. Even liberal democratic Jews today will obsessively condemn Israel, almost to the total exclusion of any other issue at hand. The small matter that Israel is fighting an existential war against Hamas, Hezbollah and Iran, who openly claim they don't want a two-state solution, but rather the annihilation of the total country and all her people, has somehow escaped them. Is Israel totally blameless in everything they do? No. Is any other country in the world blameless in their decision-making? No. Apply equal standards and measures, otherwise your prejudice shines through. So why am I hopeful? Because I believe there's a profound opportunity today to unlearn the nonsensical and idiotic prejudices that have been programmed into us in shifting focus from those tiny differences which are tragically used to divide us, to the overwhelming and beautiful things that unite us: family, friendship, values, hopes, dreams, health, the environment, and everything else that builds the concept of humanity. What we believe about others is simply a reflection of who we are, not who they are. If COVID-19 has taught us one thing, it's that we are one people, and that together we will either triumph or fail. I wish you all a Shana Tova, a Happy New Year. Let the apple we dip in honey be the apple that represents a whole and full year, and not the apple that the snake gave to Eve. Let the sweet honey remind us of our common humanity. It's made by bees, and as we all know, if the bees die, we'll all die. If we die, it won't affect the bees. In fact, they'll thrive. Let's open our eyes to the obvious and put love, kindness and humanity ahead of any hate and constructed separation. Let's move from divide and rule to #unite and cool.